Ontario is holding a high-stakes lottery today to distribute 25 permits for private cannabis stores. That may not sound like enough retail outlets to service a province of 14 million people. But the provincial government insists there isn't enough supply to fill more store shelves. So let's get the details on Ontario's plan. Attorney General Caroline Mulroney joins us from Toronto. Minister, thank you for being there. Why only 25 stores for the whole province?
Well, as you said right off the top, there is a supply shortage, not only in Ontario, but across the country. And we decided, instead of proceeding with a completely open private retail market on April 1st, which had been our intention, which we announced this summer, we saw what was happening across the country, and so we decided to take this temporary measure, which was to impose a cap of 25 stores for the time being. It is certainly not our intention to have 25 retail stores in Ontario, but we need more supply to be able to fill the shelves of more stores than that. And so we're waiting for the federal government that licenses producers to address the national supply shortage, and when that happens, then we'll be able to loosen the restrictions and move towards a more open allocation model.
Okay, Minister. So let me ask you this. Now you have thousands of applicants. I hear up to 8,000 people who would like to open pot stores in Ontario. Now, how many of these stores could eventually open?
So 25 stores will open on April 1st. The lottery that occurred this week will give people numbers based on just a simple expression of interest. And the AGCO, the Alcohol Gaming Commission of Ontario, will then be doing the diligence required to then move to the next step, which is licensing. But only 25 people will be granted, or 25 organizations, whatever the setup is, will be granted licenses to operate a retail store in Ontario.
So you've said yourself, I think, that Ontario will meet less than a quarter of demand for pot this year. Now, did you drop the ball, the provincial government, or is it the federal government? Because somebody here dropped the ball.
Well, it absolutely is the federal government's responsibility to license producers. They're in charge of supply. It was the federal government's decision to legalize cannabis across the country on October 17th. They set the date, and they licensed producers. So supply is 100% their responsibility. Provinces across this country are in charge of the retail system and regulating the market. And so we were ready on October 17th. Because Ontario had made the decision this summer to move from a public retail system to a private model, we announced that on October 17th, what we did is we just launched the online store, so Ontarians could purchase cannabis legally through the online channel, the OCS, and we announced that we would then move the opening of retail bricks and mortar stores to April 1st. Since October 17th, what we've seen, though, is that across the country, licenses were awarded and people have not been able to open stores. They haven't been able to keep their shelves filled. In New Brunswick this week, they were laying workers off. We don't want that to happen to Ontario retailers, and so that's why we decided, because the federal government has not managed the supply system to meet demand, that we've decided just temporarily to limit the number of store licenses that are granted for April 1st.
You know, it's very odd for somebody from my generation to be talking to a justice minister about the retail, the selling of marijuana. I never thought I would ever have this conversation with you, but I'm wondering, this is what we were told. The government is going to legalize marijuana, so we take it away from criminal organizations. And it seems that, I understand, a couple of weeks, a couple of months of delay, but you were talking about a whole year of delay. So 25 stores in April, which means that maybe another 25 stores in 2020. So explain this to those people who are listening to us. How is this taking away this business from criminal organizations if governments can't supply what people are demanding?
Well, I can appreciate that it is an odd conversation to be having. Yes. It is for a lot of people. It is. I have to say, I was not expecting that as I entered politics and came into this role that cannabis would be the biggest file that I got early on, but it is, and it's because the federal government made the decision to legalize cannabis, and they did so to undercut the illegal market. But because they control supply, it is up to them to help us manage that. So we are holding up our end of the bargain. We are managing our retail system. I believe that by scaling back our plans to go to a completely open private retail system, by scaling it back to 25 stores, we're doing that in that's a responsible move. It gives retailers commercial certainty, but we're doing our best to curb the illegal market.
Yes, but
Ontarians can.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you're not undercutting the illegal market. That's the whole point, is that if you are not supplying the marijuana that people are demanding, somebody else will, and that somebody else is an illegal seller. So you're not undercutting, and as the Justice Minister, as the Attorney General of Ontario, it must frustrate you to see that illegal marijuana is still being sold in Ontario for sure.
Well, Ontarians should be buying their legal marijuana through the Ontario Cannabis Store. It's available to Ontarians over the age of 19. But it certainly is frustrating, given the demand that we've seen for this product, that the federal government has not been able to match supply to meet this demand. It was their decision to legalize it, and they manage supply. So each province is handling this the best that they can. I think that Ontario has taken a responsible approach by limiting the number of retailers so that they have some more certainty as they enter this new market. But you know, it is a completely it's uncharted. We're in uncharted waters. Marijuana has only been legal for a few weeks in Canada, and everyone from the justice system to police to the regulators to government officials, we're all doing our best to adjust to this new regime. But as I've said, the federal government decided that legalizing cannabis was the way to undercut the illegal market, but that only works if you have the supply to meet the demand. And so we know that they're working on making sure that licensed producers are able to supply provinces with the product that's required. But we're waiting for that.
Caroline Mulroney, thank you so much for being there.
Thank you for having me.